To your point about frustrating partisanship, Osborne has said that he's not accepting any endorsements from any political party or politician in this race. When you look at Nebraska's partisanship overall, according to Pew Research data, 17% of adults do not identify with any party. 47% identify as Republican or lean Republican, and 36% identify as Democrat or lean Democrat. I think taking that all together, what should we make of the fact that this race is close? Given that folks may not know exactly what partisanship Osborne is attached to Osborne, but people certainly know how they themselves feel, and one of them is clearly a Republican.
Again, Osborne's support is fairly low. He's only a little bit above where Biden was in the state in 2020. Biden won 39% of the vote in Nebraska, and Osborne is hovering around 43%. And again, there's no guarantee that it will go that much higher once those undecided voters are allocated. But again, it makes sense when you have an independent option who, maybe says a few conservative things. And again, there is a general anti-incumbent attitude out there across the whole country, even the whole world, as we've talked about in other elections. And so I think that it shows that it's probably clever for the kind of minor party to step aside and let a friendly independent take the mantle in some of these deep red or deep blue states. We've seen it before with Evan McMullin in Utah last cycle. We saw it with Greg Orman in 2014 in Kansas, which is, I think, the race that this one gets compared to a lot. That's a race where Orman, the independent candidate, was leading in the polls going into the election, but then Republicans ended up holding that seat. And so I think a lot of people kind of view that as a cautionary tale for Osborne, both because the polls ended up having a significant error in that race and because undecided voters really flocked toward the Republican candidate in the end. But yeah, I don't think it is that surprising that the race is close, even 2 weeks before Election Day in the polls. I think if we come back after Election Day and it turns out that Osborne has won, I think there'll probably be a little bit more interesting things to talk about there. But if it ends up being 55-45 for Fischer, which is kind of my mental model for this race, I think it's perfectly compatible with our notion of Nebraska as a red state. It'll come home to Republicans in the end when you don't have a Democrat running, and maybe you can get some of these throw the bums out voters to go along for the ride, but it's hard to get above that 50% threshold.